Welcome back to Vice Grip Garage in part 3 of this beautiful veteran-owned Pontiac GTO. This time, I'm going to be tackling the fuel system and the brake system. Now, if this is the first time you fellers or fellettes is hooking your peepers on this GTO here, I highly recommend you check out part 1 and part 2. I'll put a link to those down in the description. But the long end of the short end of the stick is this GTO sat in the garage for about 40 years. I did get it fired up, sounds pretty darn good. And then we tackled the paint and brought out the best shine that we could with what we had. Right now it's pretty dusty. It's been parked up for a bit. Being that it runs, it's time to push forward and get this thing back on the road. So that brings us to the brake system and the fuel system. The brakes, well, she ain't got none. That's really weird for this channel. Pedals just locked up like county jail, ain't moving. Fuel system, mechanical pump's bad. Plus the fuel tank, well, 40 years sitting, we know that's just full of rotten tomatoes and everything else you can imagine. So let's drop that and fix that as well. I think I want to get stuff in my teeth and eyeballs right away this morning, so let's lift this up and address this tank first. Yippity-bow-bow, chicka-bow-meow. Had to fire it up with the old NASCAR fuel system this morning with the Milwaukee battery. Getting tired of doing that, so I'm looking forward to getting this fuel system done. And once we get the brake pedal figured out, I can finally stick this thing on the highway, start figuring out everything else we need to do to this thing. Could need wheel bearings, could need suspension work. I really don't know, other than 40 years sitting is a long time for any maker model. Hello? Sounds like a Dixie Chicks concert. Empty. That's great news. Don't have to drop that on my neck and break my C4. GM, Pontiac, Buick, Oldsmobile, whatever. 2 bolts right here, actually nuts. Just take them off, zing, zing. And then these straps fall and, here's your tank. Up here we got fuel send, fuel return. You got the wire for your fuel gauge. And then we've got a ground for the fuel gauge as well. I'm gonna clean that ground up. And I'll see if I can find a new sending unit for this. If not, we're gonna ohm out the swing arm. Full, empty, middle full, empty, quarter full, 3/4 full, empty, empty, full. Make sure we got a fuel gauge so we have the capacity. If you didn't know, I plan on driving this back to the original owner all the way in Florida, hundreds and hundreds of miles. But we've got a lot of work to do before that. What are these? 9/16ths? Maybe. I guess the first thing a guy's got to do is disco and repo these lines here. Mike could replace them, but they're not too crispy. I guess once I get them off, I'll take a look. Get this stuff out of the way first and get that ground off right there. Yeah, got them off the unit here and they're junk. They're super crispy. Look at that. Oh yeah, just splitting wide open. So I'll snag them off up here now, and then we're gonna go ahead and replace those 5/16ths and 3/8. Sure, I don't know, okay? Well, 37 years later, I've got one nut off. This appears to have some sort of aftermarket after the original undercoating on here, which is great and probably explains why it's so rust free, but they went over all of the nuts and bolts in this whole chassis. So it makes getting them off a little trickier. Nope. All right, I think that's it. By golly. There's the fuel tank. The fuel tank's coming out. Here it is. Wow. Trying to save this piece of paper right here, which would effectively be the build sheet. Come on. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second here because I have one opportunity to do this right. Unfortunately, weather and mice it looks like, got to the majority of this. However, the right side is somewhat protected under here. And I got to get a razor blade and try to get this out of here. And we might be able to get some information out of this yet. Pretty neat. Look at this trunk floor. Just amazing. Have you seen this? Nope. You haven't. Wow. Well, this is the best I could do, fellers. I did what I could. Original marker, quality check. We do have radiator, engine, axle, belts, power steering, all that stuff is kind of, but we've got color and trim. So some of the cool stuff, the originality of the vehicle, right there on that build sheet. I'm not going to tuck it up under the new tank. I think I'm going to laminate this, maybe even frame it, and we'll put it in the car for the original owner. But man, what a nice specimens. It's got air shocks. You remember that? I forgot. And one new pipe later over here. All right, so let's get this sending unit out, ohm that thing out, and see if it works. Most of you have seen these before, but if you haven't, they're really simple to disassemble and assemble. A common mistake trying to run these off, because they screw in like that, is people hit these tangs. There, and here. And they're not for prying or banging or moving. It's just a stop. See, this tang will slide over there. These 3 or 4 right here are what you use. I just take a punch basically and just work each one around. That'll spin this off, and then you can pull this keeper out. Behind this is going to be a rubber gasket of sorts. Wow, crying in the mud. I'm going to need to get a screwdriver in here and pry this out, but there'll be a rubber O-ring basically. Give me 1 second and then we'll test this thing. Got her out. So that rubber O-ring is basically hermetically sealed to this. We're going to leave that alone just in case I need to use this again. I may have one, but it might be a returnless, so it only has a out. In the tank here, I know that is very difficult to see. You're just going to have to trust on a guy. It is full, well, there you go. It is full of just this varnish, rusty crud. No good. It was a good call swapping this out. And since we've been running the NASCAR fuel system up in there in the hood, you know, we haven't filled this sock full of junk. Look at this. It's pristine because it's been sitting for 40 years. If we would have been trying to use the tank, we'd be sucking all this rust and junk through this, plug this up. You can't replace these. They're sealed on the pickup tube. So there goes that. Now, we'll get out the digital meter, flip her over to horseshoe mode, ground it out, put a lead on here, and as we swing this up and down, the resistance should change. And if it does, well, this wizardry in this box here that shoots through the wire is telling the gauge in the car how much fuel you have, which, that's good. Dropped us off in the kitchen and Jessica knew exactly what to do with it. So there is that, preserved as best as we can. We'll put that back in the car for the original owner. Over here on the fuel sending units, I do have a new one, but unfortunately it's just a feed, no return. We need that return for this particular setup. This one failed. So the fuel gauge portion is not working. This one is. I'm going to attempt to show you this one-handed here. Maybe. So if I set this in here, you can see up, it's at 89.5. Move this down, 28, and it'll keep going all the way down to 0 basically. just by putting the black here and the red on the lead. Well, this one failed, and inside it is really, really gummy. I'm gonna attempt to clean this up because the only other option is to snap this off, cut this unit off here, try to braze it onto here, or drill a return pipe into this one and braze the return pipe into this unit here. Which, after I make sure that one fits, may end up being easier. We'll have to see. But either way, I'm not putting this back in until we have a fuel gauge. Believe you me. I got this to work. I just bent these tabs off, took the cap off. There's a kind of like, it looks like a point set, and that's on this lever here, and it basically just drags up this brass piece on the inside, never so varnished up. Brake clean, some 2000 grit sandpaper, and I'm able to get a 0 reading, and that'll rise and fall. It's a little bit choppy in the center, but it's working. At least we can tell when we're empty, we're full, 3/4. It's just right around half. It gets a little bit wonky, but maybe with some use and some wear, soaking in some gasoline, it'll come all the way around and we can retain the return here. So success. So get rid of this old boy, throw a new tank up here, get this put in, and then toss later back in the rig. Big hello to my neighbors to the north, yeah. Made in Canada. Like to see that. Hello, fellers and fellettes. Nice quality tank. Got this put in. I did use the rubber O-ring and bezel lock ring snap later twist in locker down unit from the other sending unit, and I just put that one on the shelf. This one, upon further inspection, has seen its day. I don't want any fumes or gas leaking out of this thing. She should be ready to rock. Quick check on these when you get them for your GTOs. These always get snapped off in shipping. This one's nice and taut. We should be good to go. Drop this thing in. Like me some new fuel tanks. It's always reassuring. Well, you're about to see a 58-year-old man struggle and blow his back out, so keep the laughing to a minimum, okay? No, go ahead, laugh. That's fine. Okay. Gas nozzle up first. Okay. Gotta bend. Boy. I feel like that's in there. I ain't getting the depth I need out of the strap. Uh-oh. Gonna have to investigate this a little further here. The strap isn't long enough to come up onto the bolt here to slide that nut on. That's no good. Finally got her in. What a battle royale that was. That's probably why they try to sell you new straps with each tank, because they're contoured to the old tank. So when you put a fresh one in, you ain't got the length you need. Finally got this one just stretched with Sasquatch power. This one I did have to dimple the tank just a smidge to get thread started up here, and then I just hit her with 1,400 foot-pounds. And, well, that sucked her up in there. Now I need to clean this body ground up here, get this attached up there, and we can run new fuel lines. These steel lines look fantastic throughout the car. Look at that. Under this rig is something else. So zero reason to replace any of that stuff. We'll just leave that let be. Throw some new soft lines in there, get that connected quick. Well, the new tank is in, sending unit, gasket, retainer, ring, thingy, hoses, clamps, you name it. Rebuilt. We're gonna call that good enough. Now normally when I drop tanks, I wire wheel the underside of the trunk and the frame and do all sorts of rattle can restoration magic in there, but This one was so nice and so original, I just decided to, you know, can we just let it be? It says let it be. So we just went ahead and replaced the parts. We're gonna call it good. That scoot up front, we gotta replace that mechanical pump, run a new line up to the fuel, make it happener. And for the first time in 40 years, we're gonna dump some fuel in this thing and fire it off an actual gas tank. I'm pretty fired up about that. No pun intended. I don't need fires around here. I ain't got the extinguishers. Oh, I just about got this fuel pump later out of here. These Pontiacs, it doesn't matter what year, they're a lot more difficult to work on, the way that the blocks are spread out and the way the manifolds sit and therefore the accessorize. I tried to get this one from the top, but the PS pump is just kept hitting me in the nose. You know what I mean? So here we are from the bottom again. There. Finally. Okay, let's see. There it is. The old mechanical pump-lator. In this case, paperweight. Great. Yep, check. New pump-lator in, hoses, clamp-lators. Good to go there. Let's drop this thing down on the ground, put some fuel in it, and run this thing off of the original style fuel pump and fuel tank for the first time in 40-some years. Fingers crossed it fires up. Well, it will. It's a good running unit. So this here is the system I've been running. We got your typical clicky-clacker. Clickety, 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 clickety. Normally you fire these into the battery, which this one I actually had to run down to O'Reilly's to get a different one because I think the cells were shorted out. It would store voltage, but it wouldn't give me a clean positive SAD cable. So we're gonna have to plop another one of them in. But I started running these off of these Milwaukee batteries. See? There you go. And you get about an hour run time out of these. If you get in a jam, fellers. Just keep that in your cranium. That's hosed into there. Now this line, the original pipe-lator, that's affixed to the new fuel pump make it happener down here that you can't even see. See what I was talking about earlier? How do you change that pump? You don't. Pontiac. Thanks. So now we're gonna swap out this piece, get a new piece of hose in here because this one's brittle as Bob Barker's back. Get some flexibility. Swoop it over into this guy. Then we'll go back, put some fuel in it. Whew. It is hotter than Brooks and Dunn Greatest Hits album right now, and I ain't kidding you. I actually need this tank really bad. I'm telling you what, fellers, October is going to be the biggest month of revivals ever in the history of Vice Grip Garage. Schedule's just been busy with a lot of racing and stuff like that, but we're going to get back to her. Don't you worry a little bit. Throw this in the pick-em-up truck. She's ready to rock, just like this. Huh. Whoop, don't start pumping. I don't need that right now. Okay. I can't forget to get a radiator cap for this thing. The other one was not good. Boop, boop. That is done. Let's go ahead and scooch to the rear of the vehicle and pour some fuel in this thing. This is our ethanol-free stuff for the lawnmowers even. I can't believe it, but I guess I got to. Looking right at it. Yeah. There we go. Drink up, little buddy. Oh, this might take a while. How many gallons should I put in? 3. Nope. 2.5. Let's save some money here. Yep. Very specific reason we're going to be using this battery on the rig. If you know why, go ahead and comment that down below in the bleep bloop box. And that way I know you've been watching Vice Grip for a while. There we go. Well, what in the devil? I just never seen fitment. There we go. It actually fits really well in here. Okay, now I'm gonna replace these battery connector ends as well, because, well, they've been beat on like a cabin screen door. I mean, approved, but eventually they don't do the going on thing. New battery in, got the new battery clamplators in. This was positive on this side, but whenever possible, I try to move the positive inboard, so this isn't sparkulating off of here when you're jumping railroad tracks and street racing. Let's face it, we have, we start fires, gentlemen, is what I'm saying. Enough on our own. Let's eliminate a couple reasons if we can. And then, of course, write the date and the voltages when you drop the rig in, so a guy knows what in the world is going on. There's my lone wolf. I gotta get this out of here still. That's from back in the day when we were first getting her fired up. Anywho's, let's twist on the ignition stick and light some fires. All right, let's see if this thing fires up. Look at that dome light just ripping away in here. Fuel gauge. Yep, just under half. That seems right. Oh, look at that. Running off the fuel tank. Sounds good. Hard to see, but this clutch fan is shot. Well, here's an easier way to show you. It's warm, so when I shut this off, it should stop quick. Watch this. Look at that. That thing is shot. I could tell because when they're cooler, they move slower. The hotter the engine gets, the hotter the oil gets, the more faster that fan spins. And it wasn't doing that. And that just confirmed this thing is pretty much junk. I'll probably put a mechanical fan on that and just be done with that. But anywho's and how, success. GTO is running off its own fuel tank, fuel pump, carburetor for the first time in 40 years. Now we've got to turn our attention to brakes. We're that much closer to actually sticking this thing on the highway and going for a cruise. Well, initially or for starters, the issue with the brakes here is the master cylinder. The pedal is just, it's not moving. You know what I mean? So the piston inside the master cylinder here is just stuck solid. She's froze up. And it's full of juice, and I put Freol and a bunch of other stuff in there trying to get it to break free, and it ain't moving. So we're going to go ahead and replace that. Now, that's not a difficult task. What is going to be a difficult task is loosening these fittings coming out of the master cylinder without twisting the brake line with them. You've heard me say this 100 times. It's a slippery slope full of opening the beans of cans. You know, because you break these and you bust those, and then you break these and you might as well do those, and then you're doing these, and then pretty soon you've got dinner plate brakes on this and lowered suspension. You know what I mean? So we're going to have to just take it nice and easy here. If all goes well, the biggest challenge we're going to have is cracking open the bleeders on this thing without snapping them off, because you snap them off, you're doing wheel cylinders. If you do wheel cylinders, you might as well do the shoes. But if you're doing shoes, why would you not just do the drums at the same time? And then pretty soon let's just do all of the brakes around the rig. Now I gotta be honest to a feller and fellette, like I always am. The first thing I do when a rig rolls into Vice Grip Garage is just start soaking down the master cylinder nuts and hardware, because, well, I know where that's headed. Thankfully, that has paid off. I've soaked this probably 5 or 6 times, and these broke free and rotated nice and easy on the lines. I had no issues there. And the nuts on the booster came right off as well. So there we go. Oh yeah, I see lots of moisture, rust and corrosion in here. No way this thing was gonna work. What I'm gonna do now is jump in the cab and just confirm that the pedal actually still moves, so that the rod assembly is okay, and then we'll replace this and bleed the brakes. New one's plopped in, seems to fit just fine. This one doesn't have the handy dandy bleeders right up here, but we're gonna bleed it right in the rig. Fellers, stop bench bleeding these. It makes no sense whatsoever. You could just sit in a seat and use a pedal and do the same exact thing, but it's already mounted in the rig. So don't bleed it twice. So I'm just gonna grab Jessica, she'll pump the pedal. I'll hold my thumb over this till we get pressure, hook the line up. Do the same for this one, hook the line up, done. And then of course for the measures of safeties, we'll bleed them down here at the wheels, which good practice anyway. Get some fresh fluid juices down into the brake stopper later. Wheel apparatus, mechanical itises stuff. Well, the Master Cylindrius II is installed. Jessica came out and helped me bleed the brakes. We don't even have to talk anymore. We've done that so many times. We literally just listen. I listen for the pedal action. She listens for the and like it's just quiet. It's like a symphony of brake bleeding is what I'm saying. Anyway, I got her idled up here. I'm gonna throw her in reverse and drive, test on the brakes a few times, make sure it, woes it up. And if that's the case, I'm throwing the lunch pail in and let's go for a spin. Come on, brakes. Oh, we got pedal for months, I'll tell you that right now. Oh, break your mullet off. Oh, come on now. We're good. Well, with that, I'm gonna go borrow a radiator cap off another GM out in Rusty Acres, throw her on this, clean up a few things. Let's jump in. It's just about golden hour. This is gonna be a fun ride in a 67 Pontiac GTO. Whew, doesn't get any better than that. Maybe it could, but I mean, tell me when and how. I'll be dipped. Maybe I do save these battery clamps. I don't know, a guy might be able to use them. I'll hang them up. You ever get the overwhelming feeling as you're going about your day that you're just where you're supposed to be, or guy's doing what he's supposed to do? I couldn't help but get that feeling driving this old Pontiac through the back roads of Tennessee, and the fact that all this work is for someone else just makes it that much better. Thanks guys for watching, appreciate it very much. We'll see you next time at the Pontiac GTO.